episode of Behind the Dreamers. I'm your host, Jennifer Loading, and we are talking to the achievers, the creators, the magic makers, and the dreamers. These are our friends. These are your friends, and they are living the extraordinary. Well, I am so excited about my guest today. This is going to be so awesome. He says, coming to business from a career in baseball, he brings an athlete's perspective on leadership and training to his informal mentoring of executives. He's distilled those hard-won insights into his best-selling book, The LearnIt Leader, Mindset, Traits, and Tools. So you guys are going to get to hear from him in just a few minutes. But before we do that, we have to do a quick few announcements. This episode is brought to you by Walt Mills Productions. Need to add excitement to your YouTube videos or some expert hands for editing? Look no further. Walt Mills is the solution you've been searching for. Walt is not only your go-to guy for spicing up content, he's the force behind a thriving film production company with numerous titles in the pipeline. Always on the lookout for raw talent, Walt is eager to collaborate on film and internet productions. With a background deeply rooted in entertainment and promotion, Walt Mills leverages years of skills to give you the spotlight you deserve. Want to learn more about Walt and his work? Head on over to waltmillsproductions.net and let your content shine. So I'm so excited. We got to get our guest on. Now we got all that mouthful out. I get to get my guest on. It's going to be so much fun. So for nearly three decades, Damon Lembi has led LearnIt through the ever-changing L&D landscape, gaining insight into what works, how great leaders learn, and why LearnIt companies outpace their competition. So Damon, welcome to Behind the Dreamers. I am so excited to chat with you today.
Jennifer, thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be here.
It's going to be fun. We had to get all that whole mouthful out in under like 2 minutes.
You did it.
It's a lot. The intro is always a lot. So fun. All right. Well, let's talk about this. I know I got to chat with you on Maker's Bar already. So we've gotten to kind of know each other a little bit through the podcasting platform and love what you're doing. But for our audience on this show, they don't know who you are yet. So let's talk a little bit about LearnIt and give us kind of some insight on what that is and how you're helping your clients.
Sure. So I'm Damon Lembi. I'm the CEO of LearnIt, which is a corporate training company. I live out here in the Bay Area, San Francisco, California. And LearnIt helps organizations we do mostly virtual training, some in person, but customers turn to us when they're looking to onboard new managers, maybe people who are going into a leadership role for the first time, or they want to build a continuous, a learning culture, or they have specific areas that they need improvement on, like communication, or even maybe becoming more efficient with Excel. So we work with their teams and we build out training programs and we help them, reach their goals and outcomes that way. We've been around for quite a while. You mentioned it. I mean, close to 3 decades, 28 years. And it's kind of exciting. I never thought I would be here, but, we've helped upskill close to 1.8 million people at this point.
Wow. Yeah. And leadership is so important, especially when you're, because a lot of times, I think we talked about this before in companies, like sometimes people just sort of get kind of put in that position, right? And like they've never been in a space where they maybe had a little bit minimal leadership or maybe none at all. And now all of a sudden they're leaders and they're like, okay, what do I do? Right.
Absolutely. I mean, you should even take it a step backwards, is that before you put somebody, this is for a bigger organization, before you put somebody in a leadership position, I think it's important to have a conversation with them to make sure if leadership is the direction that they want to go. I work with a lot of, I mentor a lot of individuals, a lot of times in sales, where you're a top performer in sales and their leader calls up and says, hey, I want to promote you into a leadership role. And it's not for everyone all the time, so because as you know, it's a different set of skills. So that's something to think about. But yes, if you want to be in leadership and then you need to work on those skills that will help you with that transition.
Yeah, no, and you're right. Sales and leadership are very different things, and just you can be great in one. Great in sales doesn't equate being great in leadership. I know I've been in sales, right. And you're right; they're not the same. So you got to be equipped for that. So, and that's great. I think what you're doing is awesome, and everything's changed so much now. Post COVID, like everything's kind of gone to that virtual space now, and it's great in some ways because I think you can work more, make great use of your time, right, and cover more area and be able to assess more. Get to reach more people that way.
Absolutely. Both for our business where we can get a little bit greater reach, but also for our clients' businesses. When we first went remote virtual training, at the beginning of the pandemic, one of the nice things about taking classes with LearnIt was it allowed for that social connection. There's a lot of isolation back in the day. And so this was a way for people to be able to connect and communicate. And a lot of times, if we would do classes, private classes for just their organization, they could have senior leaders that they'd never had access to before, sitting in classes with them. So it was a big help and a big change. Now, since the pandemic, I would say about 15% of our business is in person. But the majority is still, people have adapted, which I'm grateful for, to the virtual platform.
Yeah, makes things a little bit easier, I'm sure, in the end. So
a lot easier.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'd love to know, because I know you and I talked off, so I know a little bit of your back end story, but obviously you were in baseball, and so you bring a lot of, the mindset that comes from that. So tell us a little bit about how you got into this learning, like how this came about for you, because you guys been around for a while.
Been around for a while. So my backstory is, like I said, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. I put a lot of emphasis on playing sports. My dream was to be a professional baseball player. I was lucky out of high school. I got drafted actually by the Atlanta Braves, and I had a big decision. Do I continue, go to the minor leagues, or I go to college? And I chose the college route. And a lot of it, Jennifer, was because I was at Pepperdine University, and I really believed in the vision that our coach had. Coach Annie Lopez, he had the vision, like, we're a small Division I school, but we're going to win the World Series, and here's how we're going to do it. So I got really behind that, and went to Pepperdine, ended up getting hurt and left. Ended up at Arizona State, where I played baseball. And, I was ready to move on to the next stage of my baseball career. After my senior year, I didn't get drafted again. So here I was, 22 years old, and I was a little unsure, what do I do next? My identity was always as a baseball player. And so I wasn't really sure if my skill set was transferable in the next phase of my career. I was lucky. I come from a family that had a large real estate background and a lot of different businesses. And one was my dad, Walt Lembi. I thought about him when you were talking about your sponsor, the photographer named Walter. Yeah. I love that name. Cool. I named my kid Walt.
Okay, awesome.
So little Wally. So anyways, I took a job as a receptionist at this company called LearnIt, just because I wanted to get my feet wet in the business world. And over the next 7 years, I kind of worked my way up. I taught classes, got involved with the IT stuff, and did sales. And when the CEO for LearnIt at the time wasn't working out, I threw my hat in the ring, and I, presented to the board. I said, "Give me a shot." And I explained my experience, and and my dad's like, "All right, kid, you got it." And so it just happened to be right around the time that the .com was doing really well, and I'm like, it was easy to be a CEO then, and then all of a sudden everything just fell apart, and there's just been tremendous learning lessons throughout that journey that I share. I have a book called The Learn It All Leader, and I share some of the experiences, the successes and failures that I've learned through LearnIt, and some of the leadership lessons that I got from playing for 3 Hall of Fame baseball coaches, which is pretty much how I modeled my leadership style over the years.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, well, and listening to your story too, it's, what's I'm taking away from this is just the idea of, it's almost like the other day I interviewed, or a few weeks ago, I interviewed a gal that I just released, and she does sports. She has a podcast where she talks about sports and how to bring it into the conversation, but she worked as an intern on the Diamondbacks. And that, and it was to say she came in and worked as an intern, and then ended up becoming, I guess, the division head of the department where they were doing all like their outreach, like their PR work and stuff. And so it's what it made me think of. She kind of got in there and worked her way up through this, and then ended up, she had a broadcasting, went into PR, and now she's doing this whole podcast on talking about sports and how to make it part of your networking game and how you can open up dialogue with it. So the whole idea of just, putting yourself out there, right, for the opportunity, and then taking it and working your way up to this leadership role.
Yeah. And for you entrepreneurs out there who are starting your own thing, it really helped me a lot, because I was doing all the different, even if you have a small team, if you're doing all the different facets of the work, helping out with accounting, understanding marketing, then you could be more empathetic, and you put yourself in those positions. and you can relate to the individuals on your team on what they're going through, and you can help them that way too.
Yeah, I agree with you. What was some of the challenges that, and maybe you can think back, in the beginning when you were working up to this, getting to the CEO position, like what were maybe some of the challenges you had to overcome?
Well, for me, really, one of the first challenges was this was, a family business, right? And at the time, there was only 15 people working there, but I wanted to prove that I belonged. Not that I was just my dad put me in a position. I had to prove that I could roll up my sleeves and contribute.
Yeah.
That was a challenge. And then as time went on, as in any small business, you have the regular challenges. How do you compete with the bigger players? How do you make sure you can cover payroll? So there's a lot of challenges that come along the ways, and I think what I've been able to do to the best of my ability is learn from the mistakes you make early on and try not to duplicate those mistakes. Try new things, but also Jennifer, try to surround yourself with great talent. I'm really fortunate, and the thing that I care most about LearnIt are the people I've worked with over the years. And as a small organization in the Bay Area, it was really hard to compete with Salesforce, Google, Facebook for talent. And so I would typically find people who were less experienced but had a lot of potential, bring them on board, knowing that I could only keep them for maybe a couple of years, but it's like a training ground for them. Give them the opportunity and the tools to try things out, learn, get experience, whether it's in sales or marketing or anything, and then kind of let them go on their way. So those are some of the challenges that I've experienced, especially trying to capture talent, and retain talent at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things for our audience that's listening to this, I talked to Damon on Maker's Bar. So one of the things I took away from that interview was really the talk that we had about putting people in the right places and the culture, which is funny because I talked about core values, because I believe strongly that core values are probably one of the most important parts of a company, right? Like if you don't know your core values, how do you run an effective company? But you said something too, I think finding the right people. And I think that, it gets back to, you can teach somebody a skill, but you can't create the culture unless they're part of that culture. Like, right. They have to be in alignment with those values to create the right culture that you want in your organization. And then you can teach them the skills that they need if they're open and willing to learn. Right.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that you say that, because I was thinking about that when you're going through your introduction.
Yeah.
I always recommend to the clients we work with and ourselves is to live by your core values, and the core values shouldn't just be something you stick on the wall and nobody remembers, right? So when we're looking to interview people or hire people, a lot of times, I believe we can teach you the skills. We could teach you how to make better prospecting calls or teach classes or whatever it is your role is. But what you can't teach is some of those values, right? Is somebody a lifelong learner? Will they embrace change, or are they going to be stuck in their status quo? Will somebody take accountability? Will you rally around your team? All those things. And we really look at that. We look at that first. And if people fit the type of culture that we have, then we could bring them in and, help them up level them on the skills. I don't know if we talked about this last time, but one of the secrets, I don't have any secret sauces, but how we have been able to build great teams over the years are just referral channels. I think everybody, a lot of clients, but mostly our employees, they know what it's like to work at LearnIt, and they know, the type of environment and culture we have. And so when they come across somebody that they think is a good fit, they'll send them our way. And that really helps. I think that's a great way to build your team is through your network of people who have come through your organization. And then from there, what we did talk about is trying to figure out what people's strengths are. Yeah. And then pivot and focus them in their strengths. I've got, a great story in my book about this gentleman named Joseph Patty. He was referred to us by our old HR manager. When I mean old, she didn't work there anymore. She worked there previously. And she's like, I got this guy. He'd be fantastic. You got to interview him. He came in, perfect fit culture-wise. we started off in sales. He really struggled, but instead of just saying, "Hey, let's part ways," him and I sat down and said, where do you think you can contribute to at LearnIt that would be really helpful? And he said, I studied, I was an actor prior to coming here, and I also really enjoy, computers. And 5+ years, and Joe's been one of our top performing Microsoft Office instructors pretty much of all time. But as a leader, it's important to listen and get curious. And when you have somebody who you think is a good fit for your team, when possible, find a position that makes sense for them. And I just think it's easier that than trying to, focus on weaknesses, which are sometimes really hard to. It's like pushing a rock up the hill sometimes, trying to improve weaknesses.
Yeah. So in all of that, what I'm hearing is we're going to go for, let's make sure they're a good fit. Let's make sure they're on board with with our values and our culture. And then we can let's hone in on those strengths and figure out where to place them in that order is what I'm hearing you say.
Absolutely. Especially if you're a small business, if you're a small business and you're bringing people on relatively early in your organization, it's important that they're a fit.
Yeah, I agree with you on that too. And I think, because while you're going through all this in my mind, I'm like, it's like the person you have in the office that like you're trying to give them some help on how can we help, you be better at whatever. Like it's kind of like what I used to say in the network marketing space. You can teach someone a script, but if their attitude sucks on the phone, it doesn't matter what the script sounds like because it's never going to come across appropriately, right? And if you know how to do this, probably aren't even going to need a script, right? So it really is. It has to be about, the values have to align, because if they're growth oriented, then you're going to be able to adapt and give them ideas and be able to put them in places where they can continue to grow. And if they're not, you're not going to get anywhere. It's going to get shut down. So
very simple, regardless of how much experience they have. And especially if they work at some Fortune 100 company and they come in like they got it all figured out. Let me just give you a little tip. It's probably not going to work out in your organization if you're growth oriented,
right.
kind of LearnIt been around 28 years, but we try to have a little bit of a startup vibe, right? We always want to continue to iterate and grow and try things differently. And if you don't have the mindset to do that, then you're just not going to be a good fit.
Entrepreneurs, are you ready to level up your leadership skills? Tune in now for an exclusive offer designed just for you.
This is my time.
Did you know 63% of consumers prefer businesses aligned with their values? Recognizing your core values isn't just vital for business growth, it's the bedrock of effective leadership. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or an aspiring creator, identifying your core values is a key step in constructing the framework of a successful leader, enabling you to lead authentically, expand your business, and live life on your terms.
Never settled on play, putting the kettle to flame. I go 100 all day, foot on the pedal, no brakes. 10, 9, paid all my dues, waited in line, 8, 7.
Are you ready to access tools to kickstart your leadership journey? Unlock a treasure trove of insights and get your free resources at www.linktree/Jennifer Loading. Take that crucial first step toward realizing your leadership aspirations and elevate your leadership game today.
Ready to shine.
Well, and I think that's what I was impressed when we talked the last time. These are a lot of the takeaways I had taken on. It's interesting because here there's a company, I don't know if I shared this with you, Very Space. They do the standing desk, the stand-up.
Yep.
Okay. I visited their office. I know somebody that worked there. So I went there, I walked into the organization. It's a pretty big place. And they take over one floor and they don't really have offices. They have their construction. There's like these, I don't know what you call them, like these plastic things or whatever. So what I'm saying is they're all in these little groups, and they don't all work on the same days. They do this, some work some days, some show up this day. But when I walked in, I will tell you this, when I walked in there, I could tell immediately when I walked in there, I could just feel the vibe. Like, I'm like, these people like it here. I could just feel that energy when I came in there. And I was like, this would be a cool place to work if you're looking for a place to work. Well, what's interesting is I put up a post. I think the guy that I was there taking a picture, we put a post on LinkedIn. And so the CEO of the company and I are following each other on LinkedIn. And so every day I see his posts, and every day he's like praising his people. He's doing all these things. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I can see why this guy is a visionary, and he's looking at this organization as the whole team, right? It's the whole, how do we collectively move everybody and make sure everybody's feeling good and I don't say feeling good, but being effective at what they're doing and in a place where they feel good.
Yeah, you should have him on your show if you haven't already.
I know. I know. I haven't gotten him on yet. I do need to get him on there. He's a great guy. But it just makes me think of that on all these things you're talking about, because
Yeah,
I think the culture is important.
Totally. There's two things I heard out of that, as you say. So I've always told people over the years, if you're coming into the office and you're like, oh man, this is miserable, I don't want to be here, or turning on your remote camera, I don't want to be here, either go to your manager or go to me and let's talk about it. Let's see if there's something we can do to, pivot, put you in a new role. Or I look at it as that your organization, you're a team more than a family. So loyalty is important, of course, Jennifer, but that doesn't mean that you're stuck here for your whole career. There's certain times where, hey, maybe it's time to move on. And if you're not excited about what you're doing, then maybe it's time to move on. Now, the other thing that you mentioned, which I think is really important, and I learned this from my baseball coaches and other people, is that when you have success, celebrate your team's wins, give them the wins. Just like that CEO you mentioned, it sounded like he's posting things about, hey, my team did this, my team did that. I've had great coaches. I've had bad coaches. One of the bad coaches that comes to mind, whenever we were successful, he would take all the credit. It was his pitching moves. It was his strategy. But when things fell apart, he blamed it on the team. And this guy missed a ground ball. Damon struck out with two guys on, whatever it is, right? And so those are some experiences that I learned managing, leading, is when we have success, I want to give it to my team. I want to celebrate their wins. I want to be gracious and gratitude for them. But if things don't go well, as a leader, you own it. You take it. It's your responsibility. It's, hey, you know what? I'll take the blame for this. Let's figure it out. Let's move on. I think it goes a long way with building the type of culture that gentleman you were speaking about, and hopefully LearnIt will always continue to have here.
Yeah, that's good advice. And yes, I agree with you on all of that. And there's something even like exciting about a leader that does that. It takes all the credit, because most of us know that when you're giving credit to your team, they know how your team got it. Like, they didn't get it on their own anyways, because this is a whole team collective effort, and you have to have leadership involved. But I would say those are, for me, are just weak leaders. Like, when they have to do that, take the credit for everything, so.
And when you give credit to your team, they're going to be out there looking for other ways to make your organization better. They're going to be coming to you with ideas. They're going to be giving you feedback. But if you're just going to put yourself in front, then they're going to be like, well, why am I wasting my time? I'll come here, I'll get my paycheck, and I'll move on.
Yep. Then you get the quiet quitting, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you end up with. So this is all good, Damon. I love it. So out of all of this, what's been going on, the whole thing with LearnIt, maybe the baseball career, what do you feel like has been the biggest takeaway for you? Like, what's been the learn moment here? I'm sure there's several.
Well, I would say one big one, and it's kind of like the theme of my book, is, I say great leaders aren't born, they're not made, they're in the making. And it's like, I didn't get an Ivy League degree. I didn't, I never thought I would end up in the position I'm in. But the biggest takeaway for me is that, just like the entrepreneurs, your listeners out there, you can do this. If I can do this, you can do this. And it's through trials and tribulations, trying things out, making mistakes, not taking yourself too serious, having a great team, being resilient, I think. So that's really to me, if I had to roll it into one main takeaway, that's what it is really. Yeah.
And it also, like, having a great team, right? Like, surrounding yourself with good people that are, in alignment with what you're doing. And I mean, there's nothing like being in the crowd with people that are, it's not that you don't want to take, you learn from I feel like you learn from everybody that comes into your space, but you don't necessarily want to take the advice from everybody that comes in your space. So be maybe discerning about where you take information, right? Like, pick and choose who you're going to heed the advice of.
I think you want to surround yourself with a great team, and you want to be aligned on your culture and your values, but you want to have diverse perspectives, different ways to look at things. And that took me a while, early on in my career, I wanted everybody confirmation bias. I wanted everybody to just agree what I had to say. But over the last 10, 15 years, I've learned to become more curious and better at listening. And it gives people the opportunity to challenge. And maybe, some of my choices are decisions aren't the best way to go about it. And if you have people who think differently and want to try different things, then, you could evolve a lot more in that way.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I agree. All right. One other question I want to ask you before I ask you some fun ones. I'd love to know how you define, and you can do this both for LearnIt and yourself, because I'd love to hear your perspective on both, but how you define success for the two.
How I define success for LearnIt is that we are having an impact on our customers and our employees. To me, maybe it sounds a little cheesy, but it's really like our vision, my mission or vision here for us is to build better leaders of the future, and that we're helping do that through upskilling people with what we do. And success is also that we create that's from the customer side. And on the employee side, that we create a psychologically safe, fun environment that's collaborative with teamwork, and it's really, I couldn't be doing this, Jennifer, after 28 years if I didn't feel like we had a great team and I enjoyed coming to it all the time. Success for me is, I talked about this beforehand, before we got on. I've got 2 kids. I got a great wife, 2 kids, a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. To me, I just want to be able to be the best dad possible, and a good role model for, I lost my dad in 2010 to cancer, but he was a great role model, great idol for me. My mom's awesome. She's still alive, but I just want to be that for my kids. And to me, if I'm able to be a great role model and lead by example, then that's success personally.
I like it. That's my favorite question. I feel like we all kind of say the same thing. Yes, you did. Good job.
Okay.
I feel like we all kind of sort of say the same thing, but we use just a little bit different words on it. You know what I mean? It's really about, I always feel like it's like being able to, it's either like make a difference, and which you kind of said that with your clients, right? And I like that you said psychologically safe. I'm like, that is so good. I have never had anybody say that, but that is so important. Psychologically safe, right? It means you foster difference, you allow people to communicate, I love it.
Yeah, because what I mean by that is, like, I want people to be able to contribute, to come with ideas and not just bash them away. Like, oh, that's dumb. Feel safe to very quick story. I was recording something. I have this great little media team, which has done a great job. We have over 600,000 YouTube followers. One day we were recording something, and it was me I was one that was being interviewed or whatever, and it just didn't record right. And a gentleman on my team, who's head of the media team, called me up, and he took ownership of it. And he said, I messed up. This is on me. We're going to fix this and make it better. He felt comfortable enough to do that, which I thought was really cool, when he could have just blamed it on the technology or something else, right? So that's what I mean by psychologically safe. That I didn't just blast him.
Yeah, beat him to the ground. Yeah. Well, and I've had that happen where I video recorded and I had to go back to somebody and say, we messed it up, like we screwed it up. We're going to try to fix it. Can I have enough, Yeah. And you don't want to go do that. And then somebody's like, oh my gosh, what did you do? Right? Like, we don't want that. Yeah. I love it. But I love what you also said about the family too, being, a leader for your boy, your children and all of that. They're boys, right? You have 2 boys?
Lucy. No, I have Lucy, who's 6. Lucy and I went to see The Lion King this weekend, which was awesome. And then I have Walter, named after my dad, who's 2.
I got the Walter. You may have said Lucy. I may have missed that. If I did, I apologize. My brain is like, I'm listening to y'all and I'm like, I'm having to pull it all in there. So good stuff. But I love what you said about that too, because I do think that is important. And I do think that comes down to leadership as well, because
totally,
coming from my background, we always said everything is caught more than taught. So like they pick up on everything that you do, good and bad. Right. And then they replay it to you when they get to be teenagers and adults. They let you know everything.
Well, Lucy's 6, and sometimes maybe I use a little profanity, which she shouldn't, but she catches it every time too. And
they do.
And she's very quick to let my wife know, Daddy said a bad word, so.
Yep. They get it. So fun stuff.
They're like little parrots.
Yes, they are. Well, this has been fun. I want to ask you a couple fun questions because I love this part. I think this is the part where we get to sort of show more authenticity, which not that we're not doing that through this whole show. I always say this is real talk, and we talk about the good, the bad of, being in leadership positions, and, it's obviously more good than bad, but we know there's stuff that goes with it. So, but I do want to ask you some fun questions because I think this is probably my most favorite part. So I would love to know, aside from your book, like yours, because I know I'm looking at all your books back there, maybe 1 or 2 books that have had a profound effect on you.
So, yeah, a couple. My favorite book of all time, I think, was a book called "Losing My Virginity" by Sir Richard Branson. You know, I'm a big fan of all. I'm a big fan of all his work. I love his book, his stories, and his style. More recently, the two books that I've been recommending the most to people are Range by David Epstein. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's about being more of a generalist than a specialist. It's trying new things. A lot of people come to me all the time and like, I want my kid to be a Major League Baseball player. He's playing baseball 24/7. I recommend that book because I really believe that you should have a broad perspective of things. And then the other book that I've, for anybody who's in sales, of any type of sales, I really like this book out there called Jolt Effect. By Matt Dixon. He's a gentleman who was one of the co-authors of the Challenger sales. And Jolt Effect's it's very interesting. And it's about really understanding how to anticipate objections that customers would have. And that 55% of the time when you lose a deal, you lose it to no decisions instead of a competitor. So it's a really fascinating book. So those are my three: Richard Branson, any of his stuff, Range, David Epstein, and Matt Dixon's book on Jolt Effect.
It's good. I did not know about those. But, I always like this question because you can get a whole book list. If you just get to the end of my podcast and get that, you can get an entire book list.
And that's a new bookshelf I have back here for those.
I see all that. Yes, I see it back.
It's not completely done yet. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. I would love to know, since you played baseball, what's your favorite baseball team?
Oh, just my local team, San Francisco Giants. The funny thing is about it is like, sure, I like baseball, but I don't even follow it as much as I used to. That was a different part of my life. I still know more than most people, but of course, San Francisco Giants.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, I'm not a big, it's funny. I live in Dallas. I'm from Houston. I'm not a big sports fan at all. And, in Dallas, everybody's about the Cowboys. It's like big time here. Okay, so here's funny because I grew up in Houston. I moved in Dallas in 2004. So, when the the Astros and the Rangers went to play, I was cheering on the Astros. And I'm still a Rockets fan, and so yeah.
I like the old school Rockets when they had Akeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler and those guys back in the day.
I actually
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I when I was in Texas recently, I wanted to go to a Texas Rangers baseball playoff game. I just barely missed it. Bruce Bochy was their manager, and he won a bunch of World Series with the Giants. Great leader, and sure enough. I didn't get to go to a game, but sure enough, the Rangers won the World Series this year.
Yep. So I was going to tell you a funny story about the Rockets. So back when like early, 90s, when they went to the playoff and they were all in there, well, towards the end, almost about, I want to say like 98, 99, I was an aerobics instructor. And so I taught at a facility out there. I can't remember the name. It was like West Side Tennis Club or something, but it was owned by Mattress Mac, Gallery Furniture in Houston, and his wife. Well, the Rockets used to train there with Rudy T, and and also the women's team was there, the Comets. And so I used to see them come in there all the time when I'd go in there, and I'd have all these little, like it was a very small aerobics class. I'd have these little old ladies come in there that I teach, but I'd always see them in there. So anyways, but yes, who
was your favorite Rocket back from the day? Ralph Sampson?
Oh. No, I actually liked Vernon Maxwell because he was kind of Robert Horry because they were kind of, but there was a lot of them that probably was the time that I knew the most players on that team was around that time. I'm
surprised he pulled out those two, not the Olajuwon, the easy ones.
No, Vernon Maxwell was the pointer. It was one of the playoffs. I don't know if it was I think it was in '94. I can't remember. It was one of the playoffs at the end, and anyways. I don't watch much sports. That's the only time I think I ever paid attention to it. So now if I just go, it's because we got tickets to go somewhere and I'm going to go watch a game and I have to be there to watch it in person. So
well, I don't watch as much sports. Now I see mostly Paw Patrol or Frozen or, stuff like that these days.
Paw Patrol. That's great.
When I get a chance to catch a 49ers game, I try, but it's a lot of Paw Patrol, a lot of Frozen.
That's so funny. Okay. I would love to know guilty pleasure food. What's like the one thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, unfortunately, probably too many, but I have to go with one. I'd probably say Pop-Tarts.
Pop-Tarts. I haven't had that one yet.
I mean, how do you not love Pop-Tarts?
No, I'm not gonna say I don't love them. I just don't eat them very often. But my dad loves Pop-Tarts and probably eats them a lot.
Yeah, no, I don't eat them often. But typically, if somebody wants to, kind of tease me or something, like my sisters for my birthday will get me like a present, but also like a thing of Pop-Tarts, and
Pop-Tarts
they know
to throw in.
that I can't really, stay away from them if they're around, but I try to keep them not around.
Okay, so and I'm going to end with this. Is there any one flavor that's better than the other in the Pop-Tarts?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Whatever. No, I
You
think
just
all
take
good.
any of like s'mores, like
Whatever. Whatever. I don't know, but
okay. Well, I'm going to say this: if I'm going to eat a
very
Pop-Tart,
guilty pleasure. Huh?
that is a guilty pleasure. But if I'm going to eat a Pop-Tart, I want the icing on. I want icing on my.
But that part's a given. Yeah, I mean, I like that. Yeah.
Not gonna be like, I'm gonna eat the Pop-Tart, but we're not gonna have the icing. We're gonna save a few calories and not have the icing on the Pop-Tart.
We're probably talking about Pop-Tarts too much, but I'm also fine not toasting them either.
Hey, I told you this is the authentic part of the conversation, the authentic part of the podcast. I will leave it with this about the Pop-Tarts. So I actually looked one time to see if there was much difference in the calories between icing and no icing. It's not a whole lot, just so you know.
How about what's the difference between a Pop-Tart and like a celery stick? Is there a difference?
That's probably quite a bit.
Calorie-wise?
Once you start filling the celery stick with, dressing and everything. This has been fun. Hey, Damon, this has been great. I've enjoyed chatting with you. And I always say that this end part is always fun. Like, they get to hear, like, they know you love Pop-Tarts now. But say our audience, somebody wants to get in touch with you. Maybe they want to learn a little bit more about LearnIt. Maybe they want to pick the book up, whatever. Where do we want to send them?
So the easiest, probably best, is connect with me on LinkedIn at Damon Lembi. And our company website is learnit.com, LEARNIT.com. If you happen to see a class on there that you like, you can DM me on LinkedIn, and I'll give you a code to a free class. Anything from emotional intelligence to Excel. And then finally, my book, The Learn It All Leader, is on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or anywhere that you get books.
Very good. Awesome. Well, thank you for jumping on here and doing this next interview, like doing another one with me and sharing all your good stuff and your wisdom and all that great stuff. I appreciate your time. It's been fun.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. We do want to say to our audience, of course, if you enjoy our show, head on over to Apple. You can give us a review over there. Hit the subscribe button on the YouTube so we can keep sharing all these fun stories. And with that, I do want to say what I always say: in order to live the extraordinary, you must start. Every start begins with a decision. You guys take care, be safe, be kind to one another. We will see you next time.